Well, thank you for joining the bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom call on the topic of respite and marriage. We have some great Special Fathers Network mentor fathers lined up to speak to the topic this evening. And I'll remind everyone that this is a series, bi-weekly series. We've been doing these various topics. This is topic number 12. And for those that are interested in the other topics, you can go to our YouTube channel and see those. So what I'd like to do is just outline the brief format for tonight's program. I will ask each of the dads to make a brief self-introduction. That would include their name, if they're married or not married, how many children they have, if you have a child with special needs or children with special needs, what those special needs are, and what you do occupationally. And we'll leave it at that. And then we'll come back around the horn and we'll talk about the importance of respite and marriage. And what I'll do is I'll ask a series of questions that will give each of the participants an opportunity to share their experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and some insights or suggestions that they might have for other dads in the network and anybody that might be listening to this YouTube once it's produced. So in no particular order of importance, well, actually, I'm going to go in order of the dads and their podcast interviews. I think that would be out of respect. So we're going to go to Grandpa Scott first. So Scott Sowers, the Zoom stage is yours.
Hi, my name is Scott Sowers. I live in Lilburn, Georgia. I was number 9 on the podcast series. And I have I'm married for 39 years. I have 2 daughters, 1 grandchild, and 1 grandchild on the way. Beautiful granddaughter and a baby boy coming. My daughter Gloria, she's 32. She's autistic. She is mentally delayed and mildly mentally retarded. That's the diagnosis, and she's just such a wonderful girl. My passion is writing and writing screenplays and making films. I did get one made. I did make one called Special Needs. It's playing on PureFlix right now. But my day job is 35 years as logistics manager and purchasing manager, the last 24 years at one company here in Georgia. Let's see, I've started respites at our ministry. I've been the head of the special needs ministry at St. John Newman Church. And I've been doing that over 10 years. I coach special needs baseball for the last 18 years. And I hope I have a little insight and some help for anybody listening. Thanks.
Scott, thanks for joining us. Thanks for making that self-introduction. Joe, over to you.
Hi, how are you guys doing? My name is Joe Butler, and I am in Northwest Arkansas, Siloam Springs. And my wife, Jennifer, and I have been married 23 years. We have 3 children, 22, 19, and 17. And our son, Micah, has multiple special needs. He's kind of one of a kind and unique. And he's made a huge impact on our life. The reason we're doing what we're doing right now, we pastored for about 5 years, and then we founded Ability Tree, which is a faith-based nonprofit organization that comes alongside families impacted by disabilities, kind of like a Boys and Girls Club for families and kids with special needs in a way. And so Mike is calling me right now. So that is what I do full time. We get to do that full time. And we also help provide tools and resources and opportunities for the church to readily engage the special needs community. So glad to be here.
Joe, thank you for being on the call, and thanks for being part of the program. Jarell, over to you.
Hey, thank you, David, for allowing me to be here, man. If I'm around you and Doc, I'm feeling pretty good about life. So this is good. My queen and I are 11 years into our marriage. We have 4 kids, 4 children that we just absolutely love. We're outnumbered and outdone, but we're still holding down the fort. We're going to sell it to them one day, and we're going to move off to an island. We have 2 kids that have autism, our 11-year-old and our 9-year-old, Karia and Jeremiah. And we are a military family, part of the U.S. Air Force Reserve and Guard, and get a chance to celebrate our 18th year coming up here in 2 weeks. And so that's a exciting thing in life. I also serve as a full-time missionary with some pastoral work at our church, focusing on our youth ministry. And then I get the honor of traveling and speaking, encouraging, hosting, comedy, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, that's our crew.
Jarell, thanks for being on the horn. And over to you, Doc.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Doc Hunsley, and honored to be here. So thank you, David, and good to see all you men. I am overly blessed. Been married now for 25 years. Married way above my paid grade with my amazing wife, Kay. We have 3 great kids. My oldest is Luke. He's 19, freshman in college. My youngest is Sarah. She is soon to be 11. She'll be 11 just before Christmas in 5th grade. And then my second son, Mark, had Dravet syndrome and autism, and he was born into heaven 10 years ago at the age of 5.5. So we were blessed with him, and he's the one who's given me the passion that I have. That is, I'm the executive director and founder of Sowers Special Needs. Should have said I live in Overland Park, Kansas, in the Kansas City area. And Sowers Special Needs, we empower families with disabilities to soar in the local and faith communities. We provide respite for families, and then we assist churches as well in doing respite as well as starting up ministries. So love assisting families and working right along this. So looking forward to the discussion tonight. So thanks for having me on.
Doc, thanks for your introduction. Thanks for being part of the program. So we've got Georgia covered, Arkansas covered, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And I guess Illinois by virtue of my participation. So good geographic diversification, but more importantly, what I heard each of you say that you're still in intact relationships. So I don't know that that qualifies you as experts, but that does qualify you to speak to the importance of marriage. And I'm wondering with the first round of questions, if you can reflect on how is it that you've been able to maintain your marriage in light of the fact that you have not just in each case one child, but multiple children, and you each have at least one child with special needs. So we'll go in the same order. And again, we're going to talk about marriage first, and then we're going to talk about the importance of respite subsequently. So Scott, back to you.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, marriage, you know, they always spout statistics. 80% of all special needs couples end in divorce. Marriages end in divorce. And my thing is, why do we even keep those stats? Who cares? That's nobody's business. And I'd be willing to challenge them because I've known a lot of special needs people my whole life, or parents of special needs kids. And, you know, it's hard when talking to people with special needs kids, and most of them, you know, are my friends. I mean, those are the friends I've come to know. Whether is it because I have a special needs child? Probably, but I do have other friends. But talking to the ones, I have friends that have been divorced and remarried. I've had friends that are single because of divorce, raising their kid. I've had parents that are their spouse has passed away and they're raising their children, and they need all kinds of help. But when it comes to longevity of our marriage, I mean, everybody seems to think, oh, this poor family, they have a special needs child and they've got, you know, it's so hard on them and it must be difficult and this and that. And I'm like, well, I'd take Gloria over a lot of these kids I know that are typical and their problems that they have. Because my philosophy is that we all have special needs, all of us. We have something that is wrong with us or right with us. But at any rate, do we have the same issues as typical married couples? Yes. Do we fight? Oh yeah, we got a lot of practice at that. We argue, we're pros at it, we fight, we've just gone at it. But one thing that we remembered, and people ask me, what do you contribute your long marriage to? And I'm like, well, we didn't get a divorce. And they don't get that, but it's true. I mean, when you get married, you make a vow, that you're going to be there through sickness and health, for better or worse. And it's so easy today for typical, it's 50% of every marriage gets a divorce anyway. So I just contribute our long marriage and staying together to faith in God, bringing that spiritual life into our family, B, love, unconditional love. I mean, when you've got siblings of a special needs child, like my oldest daughter, Kelly, and your family and your grandparents and your parents, your nephew, your family tree, basically, when you bring all them in and talk to all of them, they're aware. I come from a family of 8 kids. So I've got 5 sisters, 2 brothers. You talk it out, and you work things out. And people that end up in divorce, they're not leaving their child. They're not going to leave their child for any reason. It's not the child's fault. It's how they cope with it that tears them apart. They can't live together under those circumstances. And do I judge those people? No, I don't. I think back in the old days when someone had a special needs child, doctors used to say, hey, you might want to institutionalize that child, and it'd be the best thing for your family. And people did that back then, and we've come such a long way. But as far as keeping marriages together, it's very simple. Just don't get a divorce. But in that, I got to say, if you really have problems, seek professional help, because there's nothing wrong with that. But try to stay together. That's all I got.
Scott, thanks for sharing. And I think the mention you just made as it relates to seeking professional help is that it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, right? And if your marriage is a priority, and I'd like to think that all of our marriages are priority, what is it that you're willing to do? And don't wait till it's broken or wait till it's tattered, but try to keep those lines of communication open. And when you are in a place that you don't want to be, that you're able to open up and seek advice. And there's not one size or one solution to that, but I think you make a really good point. So thanks again for sharing. Joe, back to you.
Yeah. So, I think when you're married and you have kids, it adds a different complexity to the marriage. Obviously, for us, our oldest Hannah was 2 when we kind of made a pretty big move. We sold our house and moved to another state. I went back to school for pastoral ministry. Micah was born the week that we moved, and 9 months later, he was diagnosed with developmental delays. And, I kind of viewed it as, well, he's going to grow out of this. And, boys develop later, take longer to develop than girls. And my wife was the primary caregiver while I got to go to school and I got to go to work and get out. And, she's 20, we were 27, 28, a little bit older, and went back to school. And other young couples didn't understand it. Other young moms, there weren't any other kids with special needs in the apartment complex on the college campus. And so, the church that we were a part of didn't really know how to include us. So she had a different experience than I did. And that was probably the most for her later on, just talking with her and talking through that experience. I have a different view of that experience than she does. It's more negative for her. It's positive for me. And so it was tough because she was the primary caregiver for 3.5 years. For us, it affected the children too. So Hannah is 3 years older than Micah, 2.5 years older. So Micah was receiving physical, occupational speech therapy multiple times a day, Monday through Friday. They were coming to the apartment. She was driving to Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. This was we lived in Eastern Pennsylvania. And Hannah was feeling left out. And so Jen talked with the therapist and said, hey, is there a way to involve her, in the therapy when you come over? And so they did that. And we didn't have a whole lot of money. I was working as a server. I was working lawn maintenance. We sold our house, sold half our possessions to pursue God's vocational call on our life. And so for us, we had to be creative on getting respite, for one another. So when the kids were asleep, we'd watch a movie, or, at the end of the week on Friday nights, Jen would watch a movie with our oldest daughter, and kind of spend time with her and make her feel special and just talk with her. And we had some friends there on campus that we'd occasionally get to go off campus and have a date night, for maybe an hour. But it's being intentional and just, like Scott said, making that vow. And, from day one, we're married, divorce isn't an option, and I know that sounds easier than it is. And, for us, we've been able to take each day, one day at a time. And I think you have to be faithful to your vows, because if you're not faithful to your vows, then, that brings up a whole issue. But, being faithful to your vows and just committing to the marriage, because it's hard enough to raise children with or without special needs on your own. But having, the family unit there, it can be a very positive experience. Our girls, Micah has an older and younger sister, and they're more passionate, they're more understanding, they have a different perspective, a better perspective on life, and they're more sensitive to other people, and they notice things that most kids their age don't notice. And so I'm thankful, for all of that. But yeah, I think practicing what we preach as leaders, as fathers, as parents, as ministers, whatever, that we need to make sure we're getting that respite and recharging and spending time and with our spouse, spending time, with God, and recharging, so that we can be the best parents, best spouses we can be.
Thanks for sharing, Joe. You make a really good point, which is marriage in the context of a larger family. It's not just mom and dad, husband and wife, but with other children involved. And there's this balancing act that I heard you talking about, which is making sure that you don't have an extraordinary amount of your time and energies, whatever resources you have, go to the child, or in some cases, children with special needs, at the detriment of your other family members. And I'm just reflecting a little bit on advice that I got. We've been married for 37 years. And a lot of people describe marriage as a 50-50, right? We always have to, be doing things that are equitable. And the advice that we got early on from an older couple that was in their 70s or maybe 80s at the time, they've been married for 50 plus years, was they think of the marriage contract as not a 50-50, but 90-10. We're like, 90-10, what are you talking about? And the way they thought about it was that they're each willing to give 90%, not 100%, because you don't want to give up your own identity, but they're willing to give a lot more than most people. And the likelihood that you'll not always be overlapping with giving 90% each is very remote. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have problems or arguments. But I thought that was a really important insight for those that sort of percentage or numbers oriented about the type of commitment that it takes, the give and take that it takes. So anyway, Joe, thanks again for sharing. Jarell, back to you.
Marriage has really been a treat. It is really, when people say it's hard work, I've learned like it really is hard work, but it's honoring work. And we're still pretty young in our marriage, but when we came into marriage, my wife had gone through a divorce previously. She was married at 19 and had gotten into an abusive relationship as a pastor's kid. It was like just the family was torn on traditions and values and what should have happened. And she was pregnant before marriage. And so she had weight coming into marriage, that marriage did not work like many, kind of predicted. And then years later, her and I were married. I was married with a son, my first son, he was 4. He came out as 4 years old. Can you believe that? And I was just playing. And we were in the military. She was pregnant in 2009, and I was deployed right away in 2009, and came back shortly from Iraq, and we were able to have the baby together. And then just 13 months later, we had Jeremiah. And he was born also with autism. And several years after that, I was deployed again, and she was pregnant and had the baby and graduated school and did several things as an amazing queen that she is. We've always had several variables in our marriage. And we had wrestlings from previous marriage. We were still dealing with custody things coming into parts of our marriage. We had many moving variables. College, church, moving to church, different callings. I started traveling a lot in ministry. And so we had to continue to come back to places where we took care of each other, took care of self and took care of each other. And we started asking ourselves this question, like, what does God want for our marriage? How does God see our marriage? And how can we like dramatically run in that direction? And the more that we got out of the way of what God wanted and partnered with him in walking in that marriage, things not only became easier, they became more whole. And we then got into these like identity crises, it feels like, in our marriage. Like when one thing smoothed out, it's like God gave us this another level, like, but I want you to see this too. And here and the D word came out a couple times. And I don't know, I just wasn't having it as a male, but that doesn't leave room to say that she was the one that was going for it. It's just that I made these commitments. I don't like giving up in fights. I really don't. Anyone that knows me, I'm a boxing fanatic. I love boxing. It changed my life. I grew up doing it. I don't like giving up fights, you know? And so I just remember distinctly, again, at a certain point in our marriage, just going, honey, like we gotta ask God again, what does he want right now in this moment? What does he want for our family? How does he want us to grow and thrive in the midst of in-laws? How does he want us to grow and thrive in the midst of being a blended family, military family, for-profit family, nonprofit family, traveling family? How does God want that? Because we clearly can see that God is leading us in this thing, but it feels like we're kind of standing in the way, not each other's way, just in the way with some internal things that are going on in us. And so the more that we are able to like give God the layers of our heart, the more that we were like able to open up in marriage. There's times where I would go, honey, have you noticed something? She's like, what? I'm like, we haven't argued in a month, you know, like what's happening now that hasn't happened then, you know? And we were willing to give God like the conflicts in our heart, the internal thing that we were wrestling with, that we were fighting each other over, that we had no business fighting each other over. So I say all that to say, like, our marriage had to be healed because we got healed. And our marriage became more whole and became more like exuberant because we allowed God to take the most advantage of something that he brought together. And so our journey has really been going like, how can we continue to allow God to be God and Lord and King over everything? Because obviously he is using us. We are eclectic people with the variety and the spice of life. And we see that, we feel that. We're not going to back down from it. But how do we make sure we're not hurting each other in the process? And that's an easy way to sum up 11 years, but the luggage that came in with it. And I got to tell you, like, I truly admire my wife and what I've watched her overcome and like work and rework and get before the Lord and say, honey, let's lock this up, man. Let's go before the Lord, because these kids, I'm gonna kill one of these kids, and you better hold me back. So I watched that, and let me tell you, in doing so, because obviously I've been the main provider, the traveler, the defender, all those kind of things, and we've had two different dispositions of how parenting works. But the thing that we've learned is we partner with each other to take care of each other. I mean, we talk sometimes 5-6 times a day. If I'm on break, I don't call friends. I call my wife, just checking in. How are you doing? If there's a dilemma, we're praying. And this is stuff we were doing all beforehand, but we weren't always fighting. But it's without the fight, so it's a lot easier. And when we realize, man, the enemy is trying to pluck our marriage. He is trying to pluck off our kids. He is trying to get at us. We said, whether it's autism, blended, blood kids, kids by blood, whatever the case is, we're going to defend this marriage. We're going to live like God wants us to live. We are going to love our kids right where we are at. We are going to take care of each other. The enemy hates you as a husband. The enemy hates you as a wife, but we are called to love each other and exemplify what God wants. And that made us lay everything down. She is the most precious, beautiful, amazing young lady. And we get the chance to parent these wonderful kids together. So we had to get out of the way with so many things in our marriage. We knew we wanted to be with each other. We're crazy about each other. We are attractive to each other. We love those kids, undeniable. But to have a good marriage and even parent well, we just wanted to get out of the way of what God was doing and just walk with him in it. And that's been the big game changer for us. So we still do the same exact stuff that we do, but we lead together. We stand together. We defend each other. We don't fight each other. We lay our agendas down. We let God be king. And I can say our marriage is so Christ-centered. Our parenting is so Christ-centered. We are so flawed, but that's not the most impressive thing. It's just so Christ-centered, and we get a chance to enjoy that. And that helps our joy be made complete. That helps us parent well. That helps us laugh when our little autistic daughter is being so defiant because something is communicating a different message than what we're giving her, and it's a fight at every prompt. It's a fight with this girl, and man, I don't know. Last thing I'll just say, our house is so loud and it's so dynamic. My son, he was sitting at the table one time with us, and I mean, our youngest daughter, who was a jukebox, was singing, and Jeremiah, our son with autism, he was doing his flippy and flappy thing. I don't mean to sound offensive, I'm just saying. And our daughter, Karia, was doing her defiant thing. She challenges everything. And my son, John, who is our oldest, very quiet, very observative kid says, "Is this really happening right now? is this really going on at the table right now?" And our daughter Karia has this big blow up and she's screaming and crying, and he goes, "This feels like a dream." And that's our house. And we lay that all down before Jesus, and I'm telling you, he is running the show. And I just thank God for him, man. I thank God for him. So, yeah.
Well, Jarell, thanks for sharing. It does sound like a little bit of a circus there at the dinner table, if that's what you were describing. And
Oh, yeah.
one of the things I heard each of the three of you talk about is your faith and the importance of spirituality, which got me thinking. I had the benefit of meeting Father Hesper, the longtime former president of Notre Dame University, and I'm fairly confident that he was attributed to the quote that the most important thing a father can do for his children is love their mother. And I heard you each saying that, not in as many words, but I was reminded of that because of your reference to your spirituality and your faith. So again, thanks for sharing. Doc, back over to you.
Yeah, so thank you. So I'm going to echo a lot that everyone else said. One of the first things is divorce. The D word has never been in my vocabulary, never been in my wife's vocabulary. We've said from day one when we got married, we were going to be together for life, no matter what, for better or for worse. And you know, we've had multiple trials. We've had a lot of bad days in our life. But we've had God there, and it's drawn us closer. And so our marriage, you know, kind of building on all that, our marriage is not two people. Our marriage is three people, because God's at the center of our marriage. And so, you know, and the Bible talks about that. It's that cord, of three. A rope of three is so much stronger than a rope of two strings to it. And that's what our marriage is, you know, by having God at the center of it. And I'm going to go one step further to what you were sharing earlier, David. I think a marriage is 100%, 100%, and 100%. It's 3 100s because God's in the center. And the reason I say 100 is because God gives 100% of himself to us. He gave his son to die for us, and he expects us to do the same. I would give my life for my wife in a heartbeat. She would do the same for me. So we can do all that without losing our identity, but it's being there for our spouse and doing absolutely anything at any point in time. And knowing there are going to be some days that are fantastic, and there are going to be some days that are really, really hard. And you just have to be there. There are going to be things that you absolutely don't want to do and you never hope to have to do, but you're going to do them. And, that might mean even, watching a Hallmark Christmas movie or something, who knows, whatever that might be, you're doing it. And you'll do it with a smile. Why? Because you love your wife and you're doing that. But, it also comes back to, and I've shared this before, the most important thing in a marriage is communication. You've got to be able to talk with one another. And we all said that earlier. And, I say this a lot, and I truly don't believe it's coincidental. The most important thing with listening, if you take the word listen and switch the letters around, it spells silent. The most important part in being a good listener is being silent. And so there's many times where just sit and listen to my wife talk. And there's times where she sits and listens to me. And that's how a marriage has to work. You have to give the other time, even when you don't feel like it. You might feel tired, you might want to go to bed, but if they need to talk, you talk. You go over whatever needs to happen. You're there for them. You help them out through whatever it is. She's got my back, I've got her back. And, we are locked arm in arm and go through life together. And through all of that, it's made us stronger. The other part with it, by having God at the center of our marriage, kind of taking that faith one step further, when we have God at the center of our marriage, and both my wife and I, in our personal relationships with God, we're trying to grow closer to God. When we grow closer to God, it's like a pyramid. God's up here, we're out here. What happens? We get closer to one another. And so it's amazing how as my wife and I grow closer to God in our personal relationship, it's grown us closer to one another as well. And that's how God intends it. God wants to be at the center of our marriage, and he will bless your marriage when you bless him. And so I really think that's a big key with it. But knowing, there's going to be some hard days, but real men plow through. They don't pull the eject button. They're going to work through and do whatever it is. Real man's going to sit there and listen. A real man's going to cry. A real man's going to do what it takes to meet the needs of his wife, whatever that might be. And you're going to do it because you love her, because you're devoted to her, because you're soulmates, because that is what you want to do. And when you truly love your spouse and do it, it's not a chore. It's not, sitting there going, oh my gosh, we have to do this. No, I'm getting to spend time with a person I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my life with. She's the one who got the short end of the stick. She's stuck with me. So she's the saint. She has to put up with me. I married so above my pay grade, it's unreal. But she's the one who needs the extra prayers and deserves sainthood. But that's what it comes down to. But again, I'd say having God at the center of it, and truly listening and being silent and moving forward there, just having one another's back and moving forward.
Doc, thanks for sharing. I love your passion, crystal clear about the importance of communication. And you didn't say it, but I know you've said it before, that we have one mouth and two ears, right? And we should be using those communication tools in that ratio, right? 2 to 1, if you will. And your message about the importance of being quiet or silent is well received. So I'd like to switch gears and not treat them as if they're separate and not overlapping. But we've talked a little bit about marriage, and you've each shared some of your thoughts. And I'd like to talk about the importance of respite. And each of us probably defines respite a little bit differently. So I'd like you to share with our listeners what your definition of respite is. And I'd like you to think about this in maybe 2 or 3 different ways: short-term respite, longer-term respite, and then reflect on the frequency. What is it that you're doing? What is it that you've done that's worked for you? Maybe you can share some things that haven't worked, right? So that guys can avoid making some of the same mistakes that you've already made. I always say that, we can learn from all different types of role models. You want to emulate the ones that are getting it right, and you want to live vicariously through the ones that are getting it wrong or not making the right decisions. So if we're transparent and authentic, I'm hoping that we can share some of both with our listeners. So Scott, back to you.
Well, you guys are awesome. Anyway, I'm going to go off out of the box a little bit on respite because, when I was younger, respite in the old movies was a doctor prescribed a visit to the countryside or a cruise on an ocean liner to seek respite from an unpleasant or uncomfortable situation. But for me, Sharon wants respite from me. I mean, golf is respite, fishing is respite, doing a triathlon is respite. If we're all unnerved and upset and fighting and carrying on, I mean, that happened a lot when I was young because we had so many kids in the family, but that affects everybody down the line. That affects the kids. That will flow over into your parents. It will flow over to your siblings, your cousins, your own. You have this whole family tree that is looking at you and wanting to help or there for you to talk to. And some of the families with special needs kids, I found, have a tendency to hold out, to hole up, isolate themselves. They have all these things going on. For me, respite is get rejuvenated, get renewed, get re-energized, and just go take care of it, but not just for yourself. You take a family vacation, that's a respite. You go out on a town with your wife, or you let your oldest daughter watch your youngest daughter, and you go off for the weekend. You reach out to the network, create a network of people that love you, because love is where it's at. I wouldn't take Gloria over to somewhere that I didn't check out or trust or make sure she's going to be okay. I mean, we used to have parents drop off kids, see ya, and didn't know anything about it. They were just wanting to get away. And to me, you really don't need to. You might have to, but seeking out places that offer respite, that's great. But if you look around your community, look around your friends, look around the people that came to your weddings when you were young, look at the people that came there when your child was born. They want and need to help you. It makes them feel good. So you create a network of people that you can reach out to rather than hide from. And you'd be shocked how many would love to have your child for a day, or love to have your child spend the weekend with them. And you trust these people. So the big deal, about respite is, I need some time off. I need a break. I need this. I don't need a break. I just would like to live, go out with Sharon, go out for the weekend, go off, play golf. She likes things she does. But respite is very important. And I don't think it's important because you're trying to escape an unpleasant or difficult thing. I think it's just every once in a while, we got to, the heck with everyone else, you got to rejuvenate. You got to get yourself back in line, because if you're not happy and if you're not healthy and if your mind isn't in the right place, it's going to affect everybody around you, not just at home, but with your family, with your work environment, everywhere else. So I think love is the answer, to be honest with you. I told Kelly real quick, I want to mention this. Kelly had her daughter, and she was, going on, and her and mom getting arguments, and as mothers and daughters do. And I talking to her one day, and I said, Kelly, I said, do you know how much you love Emma Rose? She says, oh, yes, so much. I said, well, that's how much we love you. And God loves you 10 times more than that. I said, and she was just silent for a second. And she said, I love you, Dad. And to me, see, that's respite. That right there just gave me a lot of feel good about stuff. Make yourself feel good about things. Seek your respite in more than just dropping your child off for a few hours or having someone come over and sit with them. Find your respite out off out of the box. It's out there, just sitting in the backyard by yourself while something's going on. You can find it. Just learn to develop those skills of finding peace of mind in your respite. That's all.
Scott, thanks for sharing. Well, one of the things I heard you say was that it's not one size fits all. It's not one thing, and the importance of being in a community, right? And
Yeah.
thinking about those that are closest to you, and engaging them, either family members or close friends. So again, thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
Go back to you.
Hey guys, so yeah, I think respite is definitely changed and changes. I think as your children get older. When Michael was younger, we were on a college campus I'd mentioned earlier, and so we really didn't have anybody but college students or other young families to watch him, and we'd get away for a little while. Never overnight, but respite, the way I define it, is kind of just go by the definition of a temporary rest, but it looks differently. I think for like today, I got a chance to play golf with the pastor and another person, and my wife's at a pastor's wives dinner tonight, and Mike is hanging out here with me. So she's getting some time, and and I'm getting some time with you guys, and Mike is 19 now, so most of the time we're with him or he's with us, but when he goes to sleep at night, my wife and I will watch a show, and it's always the show she wants to watch. I wanted to watch season 2 of Mandalorian, and she season 1 was enough for her, so we're watching some documentary. But instead of being in the other room watching Monday Night Football or whatever, which I'd rather, if I was thinking of myself, I'd rather be doing that. But she needs somebody with her, and to just show her that, I support her and I'm there with her. And, some of the documentaries aren't bad either. So, but, it's just sitting next to her and being there with her. That's important. And if you can't do that in a marriage, then you got to evaluate yourself, because if you can't give up that freedom, that little bit of freedom there, then there's something wrong. So you've got to be unselfish. You've got to be willing to, sacrifice. And that's not something to fight over what you're going to watch. So got off on a little tangent there, but I digress. So, respite. The other thing I want to mention is, something that we've noticed, whether New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Florida, Arkansas, the places we've lived, the places we have branches of Ability Tree, is that, respite is a need everywhere, no matter how many resources there are, no matter how affluent or not affluent you are. It impacts disability, impacts every community, and there's a need for temporary rest, for respite. And what I enjoy is when we talk to our families, we have Parents Night Out every Friday night, and it looks differently now because of COVID. We will have it tomorrow night, but it's only 2 hours. Normally it's 3.5 hours, and we normally have Saturday as well. But every time we talk to our families, we do that a couple times a year. We just do some new videos and stuff, and we include siblings in that, in our respite nights, our Parents Night Out, because they build a natural support network of other kids that understand what it's like to have a sibling with special needs. And it's a positive thing, and they get to play and they get to have fun, and it's inclusive, and they feel like, hey, I'm not alone in this journey. And when Hannah, our oldest, was growing up, and she was tagging along to all the all of Micah's therapies and medical appointments and the hospital and the emergency rooms, I mean, that wasn't fun for her. And that was negative. Those memories, she remembers those, and she was concerned, and she was scared for Micah and that kind of stuff. And she was able to take part in our ministry, and come when Micah came, and Clara, his younger sister, came, and they had fun. And now it's a different stage in his life, and our youngest is a senior in high school, and they don't come to Parents Night Out anymore. But they come to our adult camps, and that is refreshing for them because they're in a community that understands and that wants to be there and that shares love and respect for one another. And so, I don't think you have to necessarily, Scott said, get away, on a cruise somewhere, which that would be nice. But I don't know if Micah, he's never been out on a cruise ship. He's been on a boat, inland, but hopefully he wouldn't get seasick. But anyways, respite is just, it's finding that time, whether it's, when your child is asleep, make sure you have a conversation with your spouse, watch a show, ask them, hey, what do you want to do? If you have a sibling that's old enough or a family member that's old enough to stay at the house and, go for a walk or go for a workout, read a book, whatever that is, take advantage of that time when your child's younger too, and they're at school or they're at therapy or whatever, and just relax. That's really what respite's all about.
Joe, thanks for sharing. And I think one of the main points that I took away from your comments was the importance of not always thinking about what your definition of respite is or what's a priority to you, but trying to put yourself in your spouse's shoes. And I think that's really, really insightful. So thanks again for sharing. Jarell, back to you.
Yeah, I totally love what these great kingdom men are saying, man. This is really encouraging. It gets me all jazzed up. And we watch HGTV, Joe. And it's real, dude. Cooking Network. Come on, Scott. Come on. And it's real. And the Hallmark movies, Lifetime television for women. That's how you get away with murder. They literally talk about it. All right. So, okay. And so in trying to add to what's already, who's that handsome young man right there? What's up, man? Yeah. What's up, little bro?
That's Micah. That's Jarell, buddy. Say hi.
Hey.
Say hi to everybody.
How you doing, Micah? You're a handsome dude, man. Handsome dude. Cool. And so my focus, in answering this, I want to try to take it a couple other routes that the men so far may have not said. I totally agree with it being respite being that rest and that reflection. I love it. I love that. And I feel like that's true too. One of the things that my wife and I, again, when we were in that place as pastors, missionaries, creatives, and with all this talent that we have, what does God want? How does God see our marriage? What does the word say about it? But then in our private time, in our secret place, what is God saying to us? What are the things that we need? How are we contending for that, for one another? And then so that really helped us to define that real rest in Jesus. Like when we get rest and Sabbath, we get him, and the cool caveat is when you can make place for rest and respite with your queen, you get her and she gets you. And that's the best part. I mean, that's what you get. You get a more refined, a more at rest, a more at peace, a more joyous spouse, and I don't know if there's a formula to it outside of finding things that help give you life, that respite, that help give you rest, so that in turn you can get what Jesus wants for your life. That means you get him, and you get your spouse, you get the most authentic versions of themselves, and hopefully positive. Because when you tend not to have that respite, and when you tend not to have that rest, it kind of goes a whole nother direction. You get versions of your spouse that you do not like and that you do not favor, because none of us are perfect, right? So we get these spouses that are works in progress. And so you get different variations of your spouse along the way. You get a different version of your spouse when a kid graduates and goes to college. You get a different version of your spouse when a child comes into puberty. You get a different version of your spouse with the loss of their parent. And so respite for us, long-term, short-term, and frequency has meant us going, how can we serve you? How can we get connected with God? How can we make sure that no matter where we at, Jesus is first. He is everything. We are still madly in love in him, because man, you can tell, ask my wife this. I say, Jesus is your best friend. he's your boyfriend. All right. Just like, talking silly, but at the same time, he is my number one. And there's nothing that comes out of it. Everything comes out of my relationship with him. Everything, even my marriage. So we've seen this really unique terminology that a great pastor, leader, speaker of ours shared. He talked about the idea of recreating, like recreation. The whole idea of recreation was to recreate yourself, give yourself back shalom and pieces of yourself that were given in all that you do in life. And that's what I love seeing. So, for example, date night for us does not happen as often in some seasons. Some seasons we're killing it, we're crushing it. When it comes down to the people that we've let inside of our world, our sister, our mother, our neighbors, two of our sisters, male friends, female friends that we've let into our world and say, we need you to come along and help us because we need to take a break away from this. We need to be in a place where we can go hang with each other and know that our kids are in great hands and our kids are with people that we trust. All that gives us rest, the whole thought process of it. So sometimes that happens multiple times in a month. Sometimes it doesn't quite. Sometimes it is the moments where the kids are in bed and we remake our bed, which is hilarious. We turn the ceiling fan on and jazz music and candles comes on, right? Because that is rest for us and it's quiet and that gives us a chance to just reconnect. It is oftentimes prayer with each other when we talk about the frequency of it and the things that we do together to make sure we have the best version of ourselves before Jesus and the best version of ourselves together is prayer together, scripture and encouragement together. You get times when your spouse may be going through depressing moments. You get different variations of it. So it might be holding your spouse when you come home. I will take that spatula. I will do the food. We're going to rest right here on this couch and we're going to hold each other. We're going to hang and hold each other. Kids, you can't come pile on us. This is what mom gets. This is what dad gets. It might be like, hey, I'm going to go take off to my room to hang out for a little bit. As a husband, I love to guard for that time. Honey, lock the door. I'll get the kids. It's learning where we're at so we can have the best versions of ourselves. Long-term, it is meant involving professionals into our world so that in turn, we can get the right kind of help that we need. And we can allow ourselves to take some of that control off the wheel and be parents that give the best to their kids by allowing professional resources to come into place, right? And then I would say just the idea of switching it up. Recently, we added marriage questions to our rest. Like I said, I love to call my wife and check in. She loves adult conversation. That's part of our respite. She's like, Jarell, when you call, this is great. Even if we're not talking about nothing, but we're just breathing on the phone, right? We're having this constant communication where we're checking in with each other. So it's been marriage questions. Tell me about, one of the questions was that helps us is tell me about one thing you would switch. If you could restart something in our marriage, what would you do? What would it be? And it's time for both of us, unanimously, time. We're very gifted, very talented family. Before we met each other, we had an array of things going on when we met each other that became kind of a force multiplier, and we had to learn how to do things together, right? And that's where a lot of the battling came in. But now that we've learned to relearn how to keep Jesus at the center of our marriage, not just the center of our lives, but the center of our marriage, we get this place where we in turn go, hey, let's switch it up now. Because the date may not be what we need. And even the babysitter may not be what we need. It might be kids go to bed early. It might be you get time alone. It might be getting one of the kids and you're going on a date night with them because we realize that time together as a mom or dad with that child is significant. There's so many things. Having best friends over to the house. I'm realizing that's important to my wife. Her best friend is my sister. She calls herself our kid, which is hilarious all in itself. She is an amazing young lady. She comes over to my house. That gives my wife rest. She serves my wife. It's incredible. They've been together their whole life. She comes along, she serves my wife in ways that I don't even try to touch. I don't get jealous about it. She serves my wife. I love it. They're best friends. Tonight, before this call happened, in addition to like marriage questions, she just texted me up. She said, hey, I'm gonna go hang out at such and such house. I'm just gonna switch it up. You know, so we're just finding those things as a married couple where we need to give that freedom and that liberty to each other to go, like, we don't need to be so rigid in this because that was causing us to bump heads a lot. Let's let Jesus be the center of this so that in turn we get the best version of ourselves before him and the best versions of ourselves together. Because when all of it happened, I mean, when it's all said and done, we get each other, and that's the prize. That's the reward. When it's all said and done and we get good rest, we can give the best of ourselves to the precious kids that don't quite know rest yet. So we're teaching them what that looks like. We're teaching them who that looks like, and we're teaching them the benefits of that. And then lastly, I would say we also have learned to identify where we can say we need this break, whether it's putting a discipline in there and scheduling it, because I live by the schedule, even though I miss things, but we need to learn how to identify that and communicate that. So here's a slogan we use in our house. So we have something to look forward to, because that's hope. So we have something to expect. I can expect that, I mean, I'm looking forward to this. You've spent time planning and helping, you know, me get to this place in my my week, or we've spent time helping plan to get to this place in our week. And man, it gives us something to look forward to. It gives us something to expect. So rest is so layered, respite is so layered, but professionally, personally, spiritually, all those things are so needed, and they're very adequate. And it does change a little bit, again, because your work's in progress. So you get different versions of each other where that rest is going to look a little bit different. So that's what we've learned in our time together.
Jarell, thanks for sharing. One of the things that I heard you say was the importance of being intentional and putting things on the calendar and trying to stick to them, right? Making that a priority and not just seeing if there's some time left over at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month. And I think that's a really important point. So thanks for sharing. Doc, you're batting cleanup, which is the most difficult position in a call like this, because obviously there's a lot that's been said already, but I'm wondering if you can add a thing or two.
Absolutely. This is tough. Dealing with a bunch of rock stars tonight. Man, you are all awesome. But I'll do my best to see if I can hit one out of the park here. But I'd say, again, kind of going with everyone else, respite is different for everyone. And I was very much like Scott. I really didn't know what respite was until I got into ministry. But and in our marriage and our life, things have changed. So before kids, you can go out whenever you want, do whatever you want. Then you've got life after kids, which completely changes everything. And our first son was neurotypical. So, we were still able to get the neighbor girl to babysit, or in-laws, grandpa and grandma to babysit, and all was good. And then came along our second son, Mark, who ends up at 8 months, then develops profound seizures, and then to autism. And all of a sudden you can't get the neighbor girl to babysit. That's off the table. And for a while, grandpa and grandma felt okay taking care of them, but pretty soon he became too much of a challenge. So, you also got a lot of parents out there who have, medically fragile kids, and, same thing there, where all of a sudden for us, life came to screeching halt being able to go out. You can't go out. And then on top of it, if you go out, you have to take the kids with you. It's not really able to go by yourself. So there is no respite with that when you take the kids out with you, because, one, you're trying to make sure everything's going on there. But then I'll say for me as a dad, I was always out trying to protect my wife from, and my family, from all the looks, all the sneers, all the jeers from everyone else, because they don't understand what life is about, because they think we're just poor parents, and don't have a clue how to discipline a child. But it has nothing to do with that. It's the face of autism, and it's just ignorance on their part, and we need to educate them. But I was always sitting there trying to figure, okay, how can we protect? And so I could never relax when we were out. So it's like a lot said, our time then would end up being once the kids got to bed. Well, here's the other news flash, especially when you're dealing with a kid with autism, they're not good sleepers. So, they're up all the time, or they're in your bed most of the time. So, goodness, try to do any of that. It's hard. So, you have to scratch and find whatever respite, whatever break you can find. So, like I shared, it wasn't until I got into ministry that I really learned what respite was, and then became incredibly passionate about it. I'm passionate for families. And so, as I shared earlier, I'm executive director for SOAR, and we produce respite nights. And we actually call them sorely needed R&R, because it is sorely needed. And so obviously right now everything's different because of COVID, but normally we would take about 160 individuals with disabilities, all ages, all severities. Age range right now is birth to 71 years of age. Every single one has a buddy. They're all trained. I have a full medical team to handle anything there, have a behavior team. But then, just like Joe said, we also have something for all the siblings, because the siblings just don't have a normal life and they need help with that too. And so we would have about 90 siblings. And then we would have 400 to 500 volunteers to put on this night with everyone. I would feed every single person, both volunteer and participant, buy pizza for everybody. It's hysterical watching the pizza boy show up with 300 plus pizzas coming out of the car. They're like clowns, but they're pizzas coming out of the car. But we'd have these great nights, have a big theme for everything. Right now we're doing everything virtual, and we're looking to start back up here this in 2021, but they're going to have to be smaller, probably limited at 10, but do 4 over a weekend, where we can maybe do 40 families throughout a weekend. But it's vital that these families can get it. And what I love, how important is respite? My favorite thing on the respite night is watching parents come in and they are just beaten down. You see the stress on their face, and they drop off their child, and then they go out, do whatever they want. And then 3-4 hours later, they come back to pick up their kid. They are a new person. Completely new. They're refreshed. They're smiling. They got a jump in their step. And I'll ask them what they did. Sometimes they say, "You know what, Doc? I just went home and I just had the best 2-hour nap in my life." I'm like, praise God, fantastic, wonderful. I can't tell you the number of moms that told me, "You know what? I went to the grocery store. I had no idea you can actually finish all your grocery shopping in 15 minutes and not end up with extra stuff in your cart." That was respite for them. And I'm like, I'm so happy I could bless you with that. Others would go out to dinner and, so many different things, but it's whatever is needed for them. But they were completely different people when they come back. And so, with SOAR, we assist others in doing this. We've now assisted over 300 churches and organizations throughout the United States, Canada, Brazil, and Jericho in launching programs and doing this. And we'll continue and move forward with it. But it's vital. We need to allow every single family an opportunity to have respite, especially when you got a child with disability, because life isn't normal. And when we already know that in a marriage, just any normal marriage is stressful, but when you add a child with special needs, it raises that stress to unfathomable numbers and things you can't even think about. It's 24/7, 365. I've read where they say the stress of a family with a child with special needs is equivalent to the stress of a combat soldier in combat. That's pretty heavy stress. And there's all kinds of stuff being done for that combat soldier. There's not a lot being done for our families with disabilities. So that's why I'm so passionate about that. We need to give them outlets to be able to go do something, but it's whatever you can get done. If it's, sitting there, playing tiddlywinks, fantastic. Whatever works for you, do it together. But find ways to do it. And if you do have family that can help you, great. If you have friends that can help you, great. But if you don't, and I get that, we didn't. It was hard. you can't stay huddled down. And last thing I ever want anyone to do is pull a woe is me. Look how hard this is. I can't do it, because there is always going to be someone out there. Call me. I will find someone in your area to help you out. There are resources throughout this country. So not knowing anybody should never, ever be an excuse for anyone who ever hears this video that we're recording tonight. Don't make excuses. You got to find ways to have the respite. It's good for you. It's good for your children, and it's incredible for your marriage. So don't give up on it. Seek it out and do it. It's going to be, it truly is a lifesaver. One story I just have to share. One of our first respites we had, I had a mom and dad who came in, and when I asked them, how it was, they said, "Doc, tonight was the first time in 16 years I had dinner with my wife alone." 16 years. And he said, this is a Friday night. He said, "Monday, I have an appointment with my attorney to draw up divorce papers. But I realized tonight, I still love my wife. We've just never had the chance to talk together." And he said, "If you promise me you'll continue to do this, I will hold off on having that appointment." Well, it's 7 years later, and he's never gone back to that attorney, because they're the first ones at our respite every single time. That's the importance of respite. Respite can save a marriage. I've got living proof of that over and over and over in our family's lives, because when stress is so high, you can't see the way out. When you can get that respite, you can get a break. It just clears the fog, and you can see, oh, I do love you. We just need to remove this garbage and breathe. When you get respite, you can breathe, and life just becomes so much better. You can handle whatever's coming your way, whatever that bad news might come the next day. You can now hit it head on, because you've got renewed life. So find the respite. It'll make a difference.
Doc, thanks for sharing. Thanks to all of you for sharing your thoughts about the importance of marriage, some ideas or techniques. We're going to go into the lightning round, which means that you get 1 minute, no more. And what I'd like you to share on both topics of respite and marriage are any resources, specifically resources that we should include as part of the what I'd call show notes, which will be included with the YouTube video. So Scott, first to you.
Got me on the spot there. Resources, all I have. All I know is the kids we have, they're here for us. They're here for a reason, and we're here to take care of them. And that, but that's not all they're here for. But if you got any questions about marriage, if you have any questions about special needs and raising kids or respite or any of this stuff, anything you want to know, reach out, talk to people, go to people, talk to older people, talk to people that are, you'll see them, you'll see in their face, you'll see the wisdom. I got guys that are 80 years old, and I see them walking with their kid, and I'm like, God, and I talk to them, and they help. And talk to your pastors, talk to counselors. And if, again, I got to digress to, if you're really in a situation, get professional help. It's out there, and it'll change your life. So I'll be open Monday at 7 a.m. I'm very cheap. But anyway, all I can say is ask questions, do your research, do your homework, because if you don't, nobody will. You are your child's advocate, and only you can do that. Nobody else is going to do it. So just do your homework, find it wherever you can.
Thanks, Scott. What I heard you saying is that you need to be the leader in your family, right? Don't subordinate yourself to your wife. So Joe, back to you. Any resources that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. So, just talking with other parents has been where we found the most resources. I would say, you know, Doc Hunsley and Sword Ministry is an awesome one. You know, Johnny and Friends is another incredible ministry, a lot of online stuff. We, Ability Tree, we launched what's called AT Station, or Ability Tree Station, which is an online gathering space this summer. And that was because we weren't able to do our Ability Camp in person. And so we're doing, we just completed our first 6-week virtual art ability class. And so we're constantly doing things on there. So those are some things that come to mind online. You know, 99 Balloons, Matt and Jenny Mooney, they're 30 minutes from us. They do a podcast, the Atypical Podcast. So Matt and Jenny they're hilarious, and Matt's a great communicator. And then, you know, Jeff Davidson, one of our friends who, ministry leaders who passed away, Common Man, Extraordinary Call. Trying to think of, you know, for men and for families, but Sharing Love Abundantly in special needs families, which, and that's another friend of I'm sure everybody on here, and Gary Chapman wrote that as well. You know, that talks about just loving, you know, your child, and practical ways to love your child, and the need to do that as a father. There was one more thing I was going to say, but you know, just seeking out those resources. You know, like Scott said, you can look on Google and things like that. Just, you know, look for ones that are, you know, that have good ratings, that are recommended, because you don't want to, you know, not everything out there is good, just say that, but look for the positive ones, the encouraging ones, the ones that are going to lift you up and not tear you down. Yeah, so those are a few offhand.
Thanks, Joe. And I think you were making reference to the Rising Above ministry, Jeff and Becky Davidson.
Yes.
So Jarell, back to you.
Yeah, I echo all that. I was just with Rising Above this weekend. When you learn to make God first, everything flows out of that. And I'm telling you, he's still a phenomenal disciple maker. He wants to disciple your life. I promise you. And the time you spend with him, you get more of him. He draws near as you draw near to him. That is a promise and something that just cannot be overlooked. He loves you. He loves your marriage. He made you. He was there before anyone ever thought about you, and he will be there long after. And then I would say the third thing, to the best as possible, something that has revamped our world is how do we like study joy? If God gave it to us, and if there's so many things that come along that can take it from us, even ourselves, how do we make sure that doesn't become counterfeit? Because there's something about completeness that he gives us that makes through joy, something about completeness in life. And he gives that to us not only as a resource and a gift and an attribute, but a virtue to have for better living. Go after it. Go after him. You're going to find your best version of yourself, marriage, health, children, things, all that good stuff right there in his presence.
Jarell, thanks for sharing.
Yes,
Doc, you're going to have the final word, batting cleanup here.
All right, here we go. So a few things. First, a book I would share is called Love Always, and it's ALL-WAYS by Joe and Cindi Ferrini. Joe and Cindi Ferrini are amazing. They've got an adult son with disabilities. This entire book is specifically on marriage, especially in families with disabilities, and do a great job. I'd also refer you then to check out the Wonderfully Made Special Needs Conference. You can get the VIP pass, which will give you every single talk we had, plus additional talks coming up. Joe and Cindi Ferrini did a whole talk on marriage. We actually have about 4 or 5 talks that were just specifically on marriage, plus many other things there. We had some from Larry and Lisa Jameson as well talking, but there's a lot of great things and great content on there. So that's a great resource for that. You can go to wonderfullymadekc.com, and it's just the initials kc.com for that. For respite, again, I encourage you to check out SOAR, soarspecialneeds.org. We offer virtual respite. You may be in an area where, again, you don't have any respite. Well, we offer a virtual respite that we're actually taking anyone from the entire world in coming in. Where for an hour, we're doing something with your kids based on, we break 3 categories, either adult, teen, or elementary. And then we're entertaining them for an hour. That's an hour you can read a book or take a bubble bath or have dinner with your spouse, where we can do that. Or maybe you get a babysitter for an hour to help them with the time with us. So we've got several families doing that. It's completely free. You can be a part of that. Maybe you attend a church or have a place of faith and your church isn't doing anything. Have them contact us at SOAR. We will help them in creating ministry, creating respite so that you can do that. Agree with Joe. 99 Balloons, they're phenomenal. Ability Tree, what Joe and his organization does is great. Another one that's out there is Nathaniel's Hope with Marie Cook down in Orlando, Florida. They have something called Buddy Break, which basically is a respite in a box that they also help organizations in putting on. Do a phenomenal job with things there as well. Right, and again, I'll second again on Rising Above. They're doing a lot of great things on marriage. Just have the dad's thing as well there, and we're going to be partnering with them on some other things coming up too. So those are a bunch of things there I'd check out, but definitely check out Love Always. It's an amazing book that just came out this past year. I think it came out on Valentine's Day this year, but fabulous book. Every family should read that. And then the book that was mentioned earlier was Sharing Love Abundantly, and that's Jolene, Philo, and Jerry Chapman with it. And again, the websites that someone asked is wonderfullymadekc.com and then SOAR, SOAR, specialneeds.org.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll be sure to include all these ideas and some others in the show notes when we post the video. So that puts a wrap on tonight's Special Fathers Network Dad's Zoom call on respite and marriage. The next 2 topics that are coming up on December 1st and December 15th are solo parenting, which is different from single parenting, which means one of the spouses has passed, and teen fathering on December 15th. 2 subjects that are super important, maybe not as wide as far as their applicability, but these are 2 of the 14 topics that our surveys disclosed when we started doing the Zoom calls. As a reminder, each of the dads that were presenters tonight is part of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad mentoring program, and they've each done podcasts. We'll be sure to include their podcast links as well. And we've done well over 120 podcasts on a whole host of topics, which are filled with gold nuggets on all different types of situations. So I would encourage our listeners to check out the podcast as well. And 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3. We would really appreciate your support, and that's in an effort to keep all of our content free to all concerned. So 21stcenturydads.org. Thanks again, and we hope to catch you next time.